Eviction granted. The gavel's sharp crack echoed Daniel's own fractured hope. He braced against the defense table, the worn wood cool beneath his trembling hand. Judge Harrison's face remained impassive, carved from granite, but for a split second, Daniel saw something flicker deep in those gray eyes. Recognition? Impossible. Or was it something else entirely, dredged up from a past Daniel himself tried to keep buried? Daniel Miller didn't look like much anymore. Thin shoulders slumped beneath a threadbare jacket. His left leg, ending mid-shin, thanks to an IED outside Kandahar, was housed in a prosthetic that always seemed to ache with the damp chill of the courtroom. He clutched a folder thick with overdue bills, VA correspondence promising funds perpetually in process, and termination notices. Facing him, sleek and smug, was Mark Finley, the property management lawyer. Finley radiated predatory confidence, laying out the case with cold precision. Rent unpaid, 3 months overdue, lease terms violated, no mitigating circumstances deemed relevant. Simple, brutal. Daniel wanted to scream, to explain the cascade of misfortunes. The VA disability check inexplicably delayed. The physical therapy costs skyrocketing after unexpected complications. The part-time stocking job he lost because his stamina faltered one too many times. He wanted to talk about the nights spent staring at the ceiling, the phantom limb pain a cruel counterpoint to the gnawing anxiety about losing the small apartment that was his only sanctuary since returning stateside. But the words felt like sawdust in his mouth. Judge Thomas Harrison presided with an air of stern detachment. His reputation in the county court was legendary. Fair, meticulously prepared, but utterly unsympathetic to excuses. He ran his courtroom with military precision, expecting concise arguments and adherence to procedure. Daniel had seen him dissect, tearful pleas with surgical questions, unmoved by emotion, focused solely on the letter of the law. Hope felt like a foreign currency here. Finley concluded his presentation, shuffling his papers with an air of finality. "The landlord has been more than patient, Your Honor. Mr. Miller has offered no viable payment plan, no concrete assurances. Regrettably, eviction is the only remaining recourse." Judge Harrison turned his gaze towards Daniel. Those gray eyes seemed to pin him to the spot. "Mr. Miller, do you have anything to add? Any legal basis on which to contest this eviction?" Daniel swallowed hard. His own court-appointed lawyer, young Ms. Evans, had done her best, highlighting the VA delays, presenting the medical bills. But it felt like throwing pebbles against a fortress wall. "Your Honor," Daniel began, his voice hoarse, I'm waiting on back pay from the VA. Significant funds. It's been approved, just stuck in processing. I can pay everything, make it right, if I just have a little more time." He held up a letter, the official VA letterhead slightly crumpled. "It says here..." Harrison held up a hand, stopping him. "Mr. Miller, I have read the documents provided by your counsel. While the court sympathizes with delays in veterans' benefits, sympathy does not negate a legally binding lease agreement. Unless there is a demonstrable error in the landlord's filing or a legal defense beyond anticipated funds..." He let the sentence hang, the implication clear. Daniel's shoulders sagged. It was over. He thought of his meager possessions boxed up, the uncertainty of the veteran's shelter downtown, the crushing weight of failure. He felt dizzy. The courtroom lights seemed too bright. Then Judge Harrison spoke again, his tone shifting almost imperceptibly. Not softer exactly, but different, more focused. "Your service records indicate multiple tours. Operation Enduring Freedom?" Daniel nodded numbly. "Yes, Your Honor, 3 tours." Harrison consulted the file before him. It notes commendations for actions near Forward Operating Base Chapman, Coast Province. A jolt went through Daniel. Chapman. The name itself conjured dust, fear, the acrid smell of explosives. "Yes, sir. I was stationed there during my second deployment," Judge Harrison leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing, the judicial mask seeming thinner now. Were you present during the incident? The attack? January 2009? The courtroom faded. Finley's impatient shuffling, Ms. Evans's worried frown, the ticking clock on the wall, all gone. Daniel was back there, dust choking him. The deafening roar, screams, chaos. The sight of his buddy, Sergeant Riley, falling. He nodded slowly, his voice barely a whisper. I was there, Your Honor. Judge Harrison stared at him, truly stared, for a long, unnerving moment. The stern facade crumbled, replaced by something Daniel couldn't decipher. Shock, pain, recognition. It was there, undeniable. The judge knew him. Not as Daniel Miller, Defendant 7B, but as someone else. From somewhere else. From that day. Finley cleared his throat loudly. Your Honor, while Mr. Miller's service is commendable, its relevance to this eviction proceeding— Judge Harrison cut him off sharply, his voice regaining its steel, but the undertone had changed. Be silent, Mr. Finley. He kept his eyes locked on Daniel. Checkpoint duty. That morning, you pulled a young private out of the burning Humvee wreckage just before the secondary blast, didn't you? Daniel's breath hitched. How could he know that? That detail wasn't in any official report he'd seen. It was just chaos, instinct, smoke, and fire. He remembered dragging the kid, barely conscious, coughing, away from the flames. He didn't even remember the private's name. I think so, sir. Someone? Daniel stammered, confused. His name was Thomas Harrison, Jr., the judge said, his voice low, freighted with emotion Daniel couldn't comprehend. My son. The courtroom gasped collectively. Finley looked stunned into silence. Ms. Evans stared, mouth agape. Daniel felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. Judge Harrison's son? The stern, impartial judge. His son was the private he'd pulled from that inferno? The kid who had survived, barely, thanks to blind luck and Daniel's desperate actions? Harrison closed his eyes for a brief moment, visibly composing himself. When he opened them again, the judicial mask was back in place, but the eyes behind it held a new depth, a turbulent mix of memory and pain. Mr. Finley, Harrison said, his voice dangerously quiet now, I noticed discrepancies in the service records provided for the eviction notice, specifically regarding the documented attempts at communication prior to filing. I also note potential ambiguities regarding the grace period calculations considering Mr. Miller's documented disability status and the known systemic delays affecting VA disbursements, which could be argued constitute an unforeseen hardship under State Statute Revision 14B. Finley blinked, caught completely off guard by the sudden shift to arcane legal technicalities. Your Honor, I assure you the filings are— Are they, Mr. Finley? Harrison interrupted coolly. Because I see room for considerable legal argument here. Argument that could potentially lead to sanctions if procedural requirements were not meticulously followed, especially concerning a disabled veteran. He turned to Ms. Evans. Counselor, I suggest you file a motion to dismiss based on procedural errors and request discovery regarding the landlord's communication logs. Furthermore, I am ordering mandatory mediation between the parties, facilitated by the court's pro bono Veterans Liaison Office, effective immediately. This eviction proceeding is stayed pending the outcome of that mediation and further review of the filings. He banged the gavel, softer this time, but with absolute finality. Court adjourned. Daniel sat stunned as people began filing out. Judge Harrison rose, gathering his files, his movements stiff. He paused as he passed Daniel's table. He didn't look directly at Daniel, but spoke softly, his voice thick with an emotion held in check for decades. My son, Tommy. He spoke of you, the soldier who saved him. He didn't know your name, just that you were there. That you pulled him out." He hesitated. "He passed away 3 years ago. Complications from the injuries sustained that day." The judge walked away without another word, leaving Daniel reeling in the empty courtroom, the revelation hanging heavy in the air. The hidden truth wasn't just a shared moment in a war zone, it was the invisible thread connecting two men across years of silence and vastly different paths. It was the burden of unspoken gratitude, the weight of a son's memory, and the sudden, shocking collision of past trauma and present desperation within the sterile confines of an eviction court. The stern judge wasn't just impartial, he was indebted, in a way neither man had understood until that very moment, to the disabled veteran standing before him. When the scales of justice meet the weight of personal history, how does the past rewrite the present, and what hidden debts connect us in ways we never expect? Drop your theory in the comments and subscribe for more stories where the truth lies buried in the official record.